Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Akil Aline, and I'm starting this video blog because I've been an opinionated person for a long time. I've been expressing my opinions and my insights, or such insights as I can offer, through a lot of media throughout my life, but never managed to do it systematically and regularly. So I've challenged myself to start putting my views and thoughts out there through the audio-visual medium. And this is my first stab at it, so wish me luck. To introduce myself a little bit for those of you who don't already know me, I am a Canadian living here in America, trying to make it in America. Although I was born and raised in Canada, I actually did all of my higher education here in the United States. I went to Princeton University, graduated in 2008, and attended Cardozo Law School at Yeshiva University in New York City, from which I graduated in 2013. After that, I came down here to Washington, D.C., where I currently reside, knocked off a couple of internships in the public policy realm, and then secured my current job with a nonprofit that defends First Amendment rights in higher education. That should be enough, I hope. I figured I would start this first recording by sharing my thoughts on one of the major items in the news right now, which is the results of the 2014 midterm congressional elections here in the States. Well, let me just say that I don't think this election is going to change all that much here in Washington, D.C. The problem is that the Republicans already won control of the House of Representatives 4 years ago and held on to control of the House 2 years ago. So by winning control of the Senate, all they've really done is solidify a situation that's already been in place for the past 4 years. At the end of the day, President Obama is still sitting in the Oval Office, where he will remain for the next 2 years. And he's, I think, made it pretty clear that there's only so much compromise he's going to be willing to make with the opposition in Congress, which makes perfect sense. I mean, the man has his own agenda, and what little of that agenda he managed to get enacted into law, mainly healthcare reform, he's not going to be willing to throw over, simply because of Republican opposition. What's more, he can wield his veto pen to prevent congressional Republicans from undoing what he views as his good work. Now, from what I understand, the Republicans have fallen short of winning a large enough majority in the U.S. Senate to be able to override President Obama's veto in the event that he chooses to wield it, in the event that they give him a reason to wield it. So, at the end of the day, this is just going to solidify the gridlock that, the legislative gridlock, I should point out and specify, that's already been prevailing here in Washington for the past 4 years. The Republicans can't really get their agenda enacted without controlling the White House as well as the Congress. Of course, President Obama can't hope to do the same, and the Democrats in general can't hope to do the same now that they've lost control of both houses of Congress. But they already couldn't hope to do it either 4 years ago when they lost control of just the House, even though they held on to the Senate. So we're going to see, I think, more or less the same pattern of intransigence on both sides, on President Obama's part and on Republicans' part, that we've already seen for the past 4 years. So I don't think this election will really have changed all that much. Now, there's another issue that keeps coming up every couple of years around Election Day. That's the issue of whether people, need to turn out to vote. Is there some kind of duty to vote? Now, at least some of my friends are of the opinion that since voting is a right that has been systematically denied to so many people of certain backgrounds in this country's history, and since so many generations of people had to fight to make that right to vote a reality for all Americans, therefore, all Americans have a duty of sorts, a moral duty, if not a legal one, to turn out to the polls every election day. I really disagree with that view. I don't share it at all. First of all, voting is a right, not a duty. Okay? The concept of a right and a duty, these are two totally distinct concepts. They're not the same thing. A right is something that you have the option of doing if you so choose, right? When you say that you have the right to do something, what you're saying is that you should be able to do that thing or not do it based on your own free will, your own judgment, your own choices. Decisional autonomy, to use a phrase that I've heard the Supreme Court use in the past, um, is really the core of a right. You can't really have the right to do something if you're in some way obligated to do it, whether you want to do it or not. If you're obligated to do it, then it's a duty, not a right. So if people are going to say that, you know, the right to vote is so precious that people therefore should turn out and vote every election day, whether they actually want to or not, then they're actually contradicting themselves. Because if voting is something that people have to do, regardless of their own will, then it's no longer a right. It's now a duty, and that's a whole other kettle of fish. Now, when it comes to the question of how past generations have been denied the right to vote in many cases, and present generations in some cases, and how so many generations of people who came before us fought for that right. Well, if they really fought for the right to vote, then that should be a reason for you not to urge people to vote against their will. If you really respected their right to vote, then you would respect their right not to vote, because it's not a right at all if they don't have the option of not doing it, if that's their choice. So I think people need to keep that in mind when they address this issue of whether, people should turn out to vote on election day. Make up your mind. Do you view it as a right or as a duty? It can't be both, not at the same time, at any rate. Okay? It can't be both a right and a duty. These are mutually exclusive concepts. So if people are going to defend the right to vote, they need to respect people's choice not to vote. They may disagree with the choice and express that disagreement or that opposition, but at least respect the fact that people have the option of staying home from the polls on election day for whatever reason. Speaking of reasons for not voting, that's another issue that I'd like to address before I sign off. We all know that the average American is not terribly concerned with politics. The average American, and I don't mean to dump on Americans here, because this is actually very true of ordinary people in all countries, I would say, to varying degrees. Your average human being is not that well versed in all the vagaries and details of politics and public policy. Most human beings, quite understandably, are concerned with, other issues and matters that they consider more important in their day-to-day lives. Your average person is not a public policy wonk. So when I hear folks bemoaning low voter turnout and chiding people for not exercising this time-honored, hallowed democratic right of citizenship, the right to vote, it leaves me cold. The way I see it, if people out there who are too, lazy or apathetic or too busy to educate themselves about these issues choose not to vote, I say go with God. Good for you. Because I don't think it's a good thing for society if the political process is being influenced by people who have no idea what they're doing. Of course, that already happens anyway. Many people who do turn out to vote regularly or often are just as ignorant as those who don't turn out to vote. But why make a bad situation even worse? Why make a bad situation even worse by encouraging people who don't have a clue to show up at the polls and influence the political process? You really think better public policy is going to come about as a result of that if people who are just totally politically clueless, who have no understanding of economics, criminology, foreign policy, history, political philosophy, or any number of other disciplines that influence political decision making, people who have no idea what time it is, if you will, are going to show up at the polls and contribute to policy outcomes by influencing who gets to sit in Congress and in the White House and so on. Is that really a good thing? Do we want more ignorant, uninformed people influencing the political process? I frankly don't. Obviously, they have the right to vote, so if they choose to, get off their duffs, if you will, and show up at the polls, I would never dream of standing in their way. But at the same time, I would never dream of urging them or imploring them to vote when they don't want to do it and aren't interested in it either. If you're a person who knows you don't give a damn about politics or any of the other disciplines that go into it, and therefore you're not inclined to vote, I say you're doing the right thing. Leave politics to the people who actually have some clue what they're doing. Some clue. Right? No one's perfect. None of us has all the answers. And as someone of mostly libertarian political views, I'm definitely of the view that the government usually doesn't have the right answers to society's problems. But one way or the other, whatever view you take, if you can't be bothered to educate yourself about the issues, then I think we're all better off without you voting. That's my honest view. So I think that about sums things up for today. I hope you liked hearing me out, hearing what I have to say, and feel free to express yourselves in the comments. Of course, try not to troll. And I'm a pretty argumentative, big-mouthed person and very tenacious. So don't be surprised if I respond to some of your comments and push back on some ideas with which I disagree, shout out the ones with which I agree, and just generally engage in a fluid discourse. That's what I'm all about, and that's why I'm doing this. So thanks a lot for listening, and see you next time.